Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
Welcome to this episode of Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. Joining me on the phone, it is five-time Grammy Award-winning singer B.J. Thomas. And he has recently done a concert called Rock for Relief that also had Alice Cooper, Peter Frampton, Don Felder, George Thorogood, and many others. And of course, it was for the Feeding America charity, which I, of course, will support, or do support, I should say. And joining me on the phone is the one and only Alan Niven. Bonjour, monsieur. How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Je suis bien. I am bien. When I said to you I was going to be interviewing B.J. Thomas, what did you think of that? Because it is for Feeding America, and I just think it's important to give that a voice.
I had a schizophrenic reaction. Part of me went in logical order. B.J. Thomas, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, Catherine Ross on a Bicycle. That was part of my thinking. The other part of my thinking is great energy he's putting into something utterly worthwhile, and it's really cool that he's pulling those people together to raise money. I think that's a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, you know, recently Charlie Daniels passed away. He is, whatever you want to call him, the grandfather of country music, one of the most inspirational, a grand musician. I mean, whatever tag you want to put on him. And BJ is friends with him, or had been friends with him. And so we remember Charlie. Do you, as a guy who came from the rock and roll kind of thing, associate at all with any country acts? Do you know Charlie Daniels? Are you aware of B.J. Thomas? I mean, obviously everybody's heard Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head.
Well, as regards Charlie Daniels, I mean, I was obviously aware that if you want to put a tag on him, the tag I put on him is huge personality, and a man of his own mind. And one small brush with him back in the last millennia, I was in my office and I got a phone call from Charlie Daniels' office, and they were asking if I represented that band that did that Rock Me song. And I said, yes, I do. And they said, well, we'd sure like to have them come out and play it at the Volunteer Jam. And I thought that was such an extraordinary invitation and so broad-minded of what I thought was a country institution that I turned myself into a pretzel to be able to work out flying the band in to play. They played the set, and then they were back to the airport and zipping back across the country because we were in the middle of a tour. And we literally had a day that we could get out there and do it, and we did it. But I thought that was really cool. That just struck me as one of those things that you just say yes to.
Let me ask you about that. First of all, we're talking about Great White, obviously. Great White was on what tour? Was this with the Scorpions at that time?
No. This would have been 1987. At that time, we could have been with Night Ranger. We could have been with Twisted Sister. I can't remember exactly. I think we might have been with Night Ranger at that point because it was still summertime, obviously. And it was just, for me, utterly appealing because it was unexpected and spontaneous and genuine. And when you get something unexpected, spontaneous, and genuine put in front of you, you say yes. You know, there's way too much calculation that goes into everything above and beyond. But to go and play Charlie Daniels Barbecue, fuck yeah, we're in.
You know, okay, so I just want to quickly ask you this. You mentioned Twisted Sister, and I have the perception, and you're going to correct me probably, that you're not a big fan of what Twisted Sister was doing because it was makeup and it was all sort of carnival. But yet, when they play live, they're an incredible band live.
Well,
what is your perception of Twisted Sister?
Well, my perception of Twisted Sister, I mean, you know, I was partial to abandoned makeup. I mean, I was a nipper when David Bowie first started to put a dress on, which I thought was interesting and challenged the rigidity of my middle class upbringing thinking. So that was, Alice Cooper came along and I went, oh, this is interesting. There was this band from New York that came along and I looked at the cover of the record and went, wow, this looks really interesting. Until I put the record on and found that they were inept and couldn't play very well. And that was a band called Kiss.
I think you mean New York Dolls. New York Dolls.
Oh, who were even worse. But, not averse to that at all. With Twisted, quite honestly, it seemed to me that it was sort of an East Coast Kmart version of wannabe Motley Crue. But I'll tell you one thing, Twisted Sister had a singer that Motley Crue did not have. Dee Snider is a phenomenal frontman, an incredible power and pitch and a great tone in his voice. And if I'd had my way and if I'd been involved with him in any way, shape or form, I'd have got him out of that ridiculous hideousness and I'd have just put him out there as what he is, an absolutely amazing and powerful frontman who can own a room from the front of the stage.
Yep, that is Dee Snider in a ball, all wrapped up in a nice little package. But just real quick, you did say that they were sort of an East Coast knockoff of Motley Crue. They will debate saying that they started in 72, 73 and played the clubs in Jersey for 15 years before they got anywhere. So maybe Motley Crue. Well, I guess Motley Crue wouldn't have heard of them. But anyway.
Yeah, well, I'll leave that to Jason Flom, who I got to know when, as a teenager, he called me up and he said, tell me about Motley Crue. We've got a band out here in New York who's the New York version of Motley Crue. And I went, really now? And Jason Flom, if you do your research, is somebody who, as an A&R guy, signed some notable bands and then went on to be a high-powered executive in various record companies. So you can blame him for me calling them an East Coast Motley Crue because that's how they were introduced to me.
That's how they were sold. If I'm not mistaken,
and Jason had something to do with them being signed as well.
Right, and he was working with Atlantic, if I'm not mistaken, and eventually signed Skid Row.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I think he signed Skid Row. I'm pretty sure.
I'm not sure if he signed Skid Row or not, but Jason had a very powerful lawyer father, and was actually somebody who had his ear close to the ground as opposed to worrying about which restaurant in Manhattan they were going to go and have lunch. So Jason was actually into the music. And his first gold record was a band called Kix. And he flew out to LA and asked me if I'd put Kix on a bill with Great White and Tesla. And of course, with Great White and Tesla, we need a third band like we need an impacted Wisdom Tooth. It's, a lot more work and we didn't need them to sell the tickets. But Jason was someone I took a shine to when he was a teenager because he was bright and active. And there was a sense of the personal connection there. And I listened to the record, and over lunch I said, listen, you've got a hit on this record. And they were just about to give up promoting it, Atlantic. I think they'd put a couple of singles out and hadn't worked. And I said, you've got a hit on this record, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I will take your band out if you commit to me to make a video for this particular song and get it to MTV. If you do that, I'll take your band out. And that was a song called Don't Close Your Eyes. And it turned out that was a hit, and it got them a gold record.
Yes, and some will say it is their second best song after Cold Blood. Cold Blood is a great song. What a great song.
Yeah, it is.
And they
Yeah, it is.
they
And
play
the Kicks had a great little energy. You know, they kind of reminded me of an Australian pub band in a way. You know, you could see them in the vomit and the blood and the beer and the sweat.
well, and the other thing is that they play the M3 Festival in Columbia, Maryland every year. They do the opening Friday night because they're a local Maryland band. So I've had a chance to see them a bunch of times in the last few years at M3, and they are great. And they work that festival stage brilliantly. I mean, you can see that had they had maybe more success in the late 80s, early 90s, they could have been on those stages with Motley Crue and Def Leppard year after year. So for whatever happened, I don't know, but when they are on that stage, that M3 stage, they just dominate, and the fans love them. I mean, you know, it's Friday night. They throw like 3 bands just to start the festival, and they headline it. They play, you know, at 9 o'clock at night, and there's like 12,000 people there watching it, cheering on the local band, and it's a great little thing.
Yeah, and don't you just love it? We start out with B.J. Thomas, we end up with Kicks. How do we do that?
Well, because I get a kicks out of B.J. Thomas. There you go. Why not? But let us get over to B.J. Thomas. I know this is Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon, but I use the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame definition of rock and roll because they do Notorious B.I.G. and Whitney Houston and all kinds of other stuff, and they call it the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So on the Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon show, you will once in a while get a Dennis Quaid, a Bananarama, a Culture Club, and today, the one and only B.J. Thomas. As we say in Montreal, bonjour, Monsieur B.J. How are you?
Thank you. Good day to you. I'm doing well and enjoying talking to you today.
Yeah, so let's talk about this Rock for Relief thing. Now, I got to hear from it through Adam Conti, who runs George Thorogood's affairs, and it was just a great event that took place at the beginning of July. Talk to me a little bit about the importance of the rock community or the music community to come together in these times of needs and just say, hey, you know what? We're a team. We're a family. We're in this together.
Well, yeah, you know, that's so true. We're a family. At least we feel that way. You know, I think it's important for us, especially, you know, we're kind of all the musicians are kind of quarantined and we're shut down and we're not really doing what we love to do because I get a great feeling from what I get to do and what I've had to do all my life is I feel like I uplift people when I perform for them, and so you know we're kind of missing that feeling now because most of us are in quarantine and you know very few of us are working. Or, you know, I had planned to go in the studio and Muscle Shoals a couple of months ago, and we had to postpone that, but I will do that one day. But, you know, it's very important for us to get together. Many of human beings from Canada and America are suffering, finding it very difficult to put food on the table for their children and their loved ones. And, you know, it just felt good to be part of that. My Rogers and Cowan is my PR agency, and they plugged me in and of course, asked me if I wanted to do it. And I said, yeah, I want to do it. And it was a privilege to do it. And just to add a little, you know, show a little compassion for that, for people who are struggling. And we, of course, feel that, you know, deeply.
Yeah, and one thing that I've seen from fans on Facebook and Twitter is they go, oh, rock stars aren't suffering. They've got millions of dollars lying at home. But explain to some of the fans here that when you're not touring, there's also the guy that made the T-shirt that's not making money. There's also the guy that's driving the bus that's not making money. There's also the lighting director. And you know, a B.J. Thomas concert or an Alice Cooper concert or a George Thorogood, it's a small business that employs hundreds, if not thousands of people down the line. And when you're not touring, it doesn't hurt you, it hurts thousands, right? Correct?
Yes, I agree with you. Said it exactly right. I am very stressed out and worried about my band. I just my heart aches for them, and of course, we've got all the crews and all the people that you name. They're involved in all these shows, and that's not even counting the the local people who our concert will benefit in some way. The people who will attend the concert and be uplifted, or just have an epiphany about something. Not to make it so my music so important, but I do feel like that that people just suffer down the line. Just the people who are even just attending the concert and going to listen to the songs that they know you by over the years. So it's just as you said, has a tremendous effect. And of course, people seem to be keeping their heads up and doing the best they can. There are some people who are just totally wired in a certain way that they politicize this virus, and they just don't get it that they should protect other people. It's not about them, having a freedom. That's so silly what we're doing here in our country. And our main purpose should be worried about the people who are ill, the people who are older. Now we're even worried about the younger people because they're the ones who have such a problem with following the rules of safety for this thing. And so now they're involved and they're sick, and still people won't get the gist of this thing, that it's put the mask on and protect yourself. But mainly what you're doing when you wear the mask is you're protecting other people. And we have a hard time right now in this era we're in the United States, getting that across to many people. But we've got to have compassion for people. This virus is no respecter of persons. It's hurting everyone. And our main objective, of course, of which we stressed and we pushed with the Rock for Relief, was trying to get some funds in there so that people could just have food to eat and be able to take care of their families.
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I'll take you up on one thing you said. You said not that your music is so important, and I will actually argue that point, and I will say that your music and all musicians' music. No, but it's important in the sense that when we break up with somebody, you have the breakup song, and when you fall in love with somebody, you have the fall. When a hockey team or a football team or whatever gets pumped up for a game, they've got a song. You hear, for example, "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head." That just puts you in a good mood. And so something that's mood altering, life changing, life affirming, whether it's your song or Alice Cooper or George Thorogood or Dolly Parton, to me, that's important, right? I mean, music is important.
I think you're right. Music is a vital part of this life because no matter what's happening, for being in the midst of all this stuff, for example, you still, as a person, as an individual, depend on feelings, and music is so important to uplift people and how they feel. You might be depressed with this thing, and you can hear a favorite song you have by somebody, and it can take you out of the doldrums and get you on your feet for that day. And you're right, music is very important, and I owe a lot to, Montreal and to Canada. They've been some of the biggest supporters of my music around this world, and they've given me a lot of success, and I certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think when you look at all the streaming concerts that are going on right now, or streaming performances, or lockdown videos, I think just that tells you how important it is, because people are just tuning in and tuning in and tuning in. Just real quick, since we mentioned, or I mentioned, "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head," what strikes me about that song, and I know you've done a million interviews talking about that song, was the process. The story is that you went in and you did 5 or 6 takes, and the guy said, "Nah, do another take," and then you finally got it. In this day, no, that's not the story. Okay.
Well, I tell you what happened. Of course, Raindrops ran during the bicycle scene in the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and when I flew out to California to do it, and I had been working a stream of one-nighters through the Midwest, and you know, by the time I got to California, I had an acute case of laryngitis, and I could hardly talk. Of course, back in those days, you know, I was a smoker and, you know, what have you. And man, I barely got through about, it might have been 5 takes, but probably was more like 4 there when we cut it for the scene. And I had rehearsed with Mr. Bacharach the day before, and he really liked the way I sounded. I was really kind of hoarse and gravelly, and I think that's what he wanted. He realized that, hey, this sounds authentic. So that the soundtrack came out fine, and then a few weeks later, about 6 weeks later, we re-recorded Raindrops for the single version that was the #1 record and everything. And we only did it 3 times, and the third time I did the me on the end. That was kind of a part of my style, because when you do Burt Bacharach music, you have to sing it the way he's written it, because he was maybe one of the greatest composers of all time. I mean, not maybe, he is one of the greatest composers of all time. So I had been doing it note for note, and we just did 3 takes at Columbia Studios there. We had good musicians. And on the third take, I did the, me thing, and he loved it. And so it wasn't a bunch of takes. Nobody was belaboring it. It just, it was written so well and had so many great musicians in there that it was almost good from the first take. And I think he spliced the 3 takes we did at Columbia Studios there in New York together. So the actual single is 3 different takes of Raindrops.
That's a great story. But what I was also going to try to get to is the fact that in this day and age of Pro Tools, and you sing, one syllable and then you just fly it in and cut and paste it. Now, right? I mean, that's what we do now. Have we sort of lost the soul, or maybe even the spirit of what making music is? Because you look at Raindrops, you look at how popular it was, and like you said, it was 3 takes. Now you do 1 take and you just hit repeat. So have we lost the spirit?
Well, I'm not in a situation where I feel like I need to criticize music, but I do think that the software approach, that away from the live thing, takes away from the soul of the music. The music now is in perfect meter. If you go back and listen to your favorite song from the, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, you listen to them, none of them in perfect meter, the entire song. And that's one of the things that made you like it even. You don't even know it's changing meter, because with Raindrops, the last verse, the third splice, which was the little part of the bridge and the last verse, was almost twice as fast as the first verse was. So I do think that it takes, as you say, I think it takes away from the soul of the music. But I understand right now that it's kind of going back to studio groups. There's some music you don't need a live guy. You just need a drum track, and you can do it on keyboards, and it's a lot of the music nowadays that's very popular and is really good. You don't really need live musicians if that's, if you're doing it in your bedroom or, like whatever, the music is coming from everywhere now because we've got the technology to do it. But I do think that when you have a live band and you start from scratch, learning the song, singing the song, and recording the song until you get the right take, I just think that is the best way to create soulful, emotional music.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I fully agree. And like you said, if you listen to any of those albums from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, whoever it is, whether it's Elvis or the Beatles or Black Sabbath, the drumming sometimes is out of time. Sometimes you hear the finger movements on the guitar, but those imperfections are what gave them texture, what gave them something. You just go, oh, yeah,
Exactly. That's exactly so. And I mean, we had a guy, I remember I recorded in Memphis, at American Studio, and they Elvis cut all his comeback stuff at American Studio. But the one guy Tommy Cogbill says, "Hey, if when you get to the last verse, if you're not going faster than the first verse, you're not doing it right." So it was just a natural way to do it. And it was a beautiful way to do it. It was a lot of fun. You didn't have an auto tune, and if you hit a bad note, you either redid the performance or you stuck with it. There are a lot of imperfect vocals in that great music from those generations that really you end up loving that little peculiar note in the song. So it's all good. And the thing about it, it was so much more fun. I have actually done a complete album with Software, and the songs were good. The vocals were good. Everything was good, but it just did not have that feel,
That warmth
with that live band. It just didn't have that emotion and that soul.
Yeah, it sounds sort of antiseptic. But let me ask you this: how important is it for you at this stage to create new music, to stay creative and come up with 10 new songs? You look at the living room sessions and you reimagine some of the older ones, which displays a creativity to think of new arrangements. And you look at Oh Holy Night and you put your take on some of those classics. But how important is it to come up with 10 new songs that nobody's ever heard? Do you even need to bother at this point? I mean, you can go out and say, B.J. Thomas is in, Branson, Missouri tonight, and the folks will come out. What's your take on still creating?
I get your point, because, it's been a long time since, let's be honest. It's been a while since I was a relevant artist, and that's okay, because music is all about what's new, and hey, I'm 78 years old now, man. I'm not really trying to be competitive with the popular singers and musicians of today. I'm just still interested in doing what I do, even though it may just end up online, and of course it's not going to get any airplay, and that. So I'm not trying to be let's say make a comeback or be a relevant artist again, but when you're in this business, and probably all businesses, I don't want to make that a general statement, but when you're in music, that virtually the only way you can continue to be creative and perform and travel and do the things it takes to be competitive, at least, or to participate in this business, is you must have like an inner fire to do it. And if you're just sitting around, you become, you don't have any peace of mind, unless most of the time you're trying to create something and do something that follows that same feeling that I had when I was 20. I still have that burning desire within me. So to feed that and to feed my peace of mind, I need to be creative. And I know it might not really mean as much as it did, but I'm going, as I mentioned, I'm going into Muscle Shoals with Dan Penn and Billy Lawson, and as soon as we get this vaccine, and I'm gonna do another project, and I've got some really good songs, and I'm gonna really love and enjoy doing it. I'm gonna make it available for the people, and I'm doing it, for myself, because I need to do it so I can sleep at night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I think that's got to be a great moment in your career when you can start making music for yourself and not worry about the AOR guy or the record company guy or the radio station guy, and just go, hey, you know what? This song's for me. And that's got to be a great place to be at.
Yeah, I came from a generation I never gave it one thought to the about radio or anything like that until I had my first hit record, and I went, oh wow, because I always wanted to make a hit record. I was in a band, the Triumphs, a little band in Texas, and we dreamed of having a hit record, but we really knew we were never going to have a hit record. I mean, and so then all of a sudden, bang, we had this hit record, and then but I never gave one thought to radio back in those days. I was just doing it because I had to do it in a way, and it was so much fun. But I had to do it in a way for myself at all times. So then, when I was with a great radio record company, Scepter Records, out of New York City, and they had great people, they could get airplay. I never even worried about that. If I knew that if I made a song and it had something, that these guys would get it on radio eventually. And that's a funny thing, because radio really resisted Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. They wouldn't play it. WABC in New York City, they wouldn't play it. They said, no, BJ is singing a wrong note in the first verse and things like that. So it got terrible reviews from the movie, but it was a great song because there was just something very true about, the raindrops fall on everyone, but if you're free, you're okay. Nothing's worrying you. So there was something about it, and it made it through. So I always felt like if I cut a good song, it was going to make it through. Now that's changed a little bit nowadays, and that pop music that I made is not even, that we all used to make back in then they used to call pop. It's not even there anymore. So, things always, things change,
Well, I'll tell you why it's a great song, because we're in 2020, 50 years later, talking about it. And all those people that said that to you 50 years ago, we have no idea what their names are. We completely forgot them. Since that's the only way to look at it. 50 years later, I'm talking to you about Raindrops. I'm not talking to you about Bert or John or whoever wrote it. Real quick, because I know we're out of time. We had 20 minutes. Charlie Daniels, of course, passed away recently. He was a friend of yours. Can we just take a moment to remember him?
Oh yeah, that guy had a lot of respect from everyone in the business, whether they were country or not. He was respected across the board. The last time I was with Charlie was way back, probably 25, 30 years ago. Of course, I'm always aware of what he's doing and the great music that he made, but we were not close personal friends. But all of us in this business, we feel like there is a friendship there, whether we are really seeing each other on a regular basis or not. And he just was one of the most admired guys. He had a certain perspective on what he thought, and he wasn't afraid to express how he felt about America and about music and about people. And that was one of the things you had to respect about him. And he will really, really be missed because he occupied a significant point of view and sound within country music, and he won't be replaced.
No, absolutely not. And on that, Mr. Thomas, we've reached our 20 minutes, so thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure. I could go on for another 2 hours, but thank you so much for taking the time today.
Well, Mitch, I appreciate that, man. You just call me BJ, please. And hey, if we get time, let's do the 2 hour thing. You just let me know.
Absolutely. And as we say in Montreal, merci.
And I want to thank your listeners out there, and thank you and your listeners for remembering me and keeping me around all this time. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
This has been Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon. For more exclusive content and interviews, subscribe on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, and many more. Follow Mitch on all the socials, especially Twitter, @Mitch Lafon, and on Instagram, @Mitch_Lafon. Get your Mitch merch now at loudtracks.com/Mitch.